I'm super excited about today's conversation. We have Steve Cadigan. And Steve, welcome to the Modern People Leader first.
Thank you for having me, guys.
This is going to be a lot of fun. We like to start with good news stories. So something personal, professional related that's top of mind for you. And we'll share also.
I probably the most recent real excitement over here is I have a son who 6 years ago was hit by a car while walking a sidewalk, and we weren't sure he
Oh,
was going to
wow.
be able to walk again, live, and he's now a freshman in high school, and he just tried out for and made the football team at his high school
What?
as a freshman.
That
Yeah,
is so awesome.
and he lost muscle tissue in his buttocks. It looks like a great white shark bit him in half. He was pinned against the wall for about 20 minutes until the
Man.
fireman could take the car off of him. And I look at him every day and it's like he's a walking miracle, and he's winning sprints on the team, the football team. So it's just unbelievable. So yeah,
Amazing.
I'm going to carry, that's going to be my victory story for like the next 10 years. So happy
That
for
is
him. Yeah.
So
that is such an
awesome.
amazing story. I guess adding on to the football theme. So I'm a big Texas football fan, and I haven't been to a game in 2 years. Obviously, like last year, couldn't really go to a game, and I'll be going to my first Texas game in 2 years on Saturday. So I'm really pumped about that.
Let's
I'm
go.
also a Longhorn, so that is also very exciting. Well, I'll wrap up this part of the conversation. So my good news is this week I have attempted my first work remote situation. So I'm in Costa Rica. Those watching our YouTube channel, you'll see that I have a real jungle background behind me, and it's been successful. And I've been in to take some nature in, still be super productive at work. So I think that's my good news for today. So Steve, we like to start off with getting helping our audience get to know our guests a little bit better. You have an amazing story in terms of your career journey. I had a chance to you recently published a book, and I had a chance to listen to the whole thing, your whole story, and it's just amazing. And if you could just share like the touch on like the high level version of your career journey, what led you to where you are today, and I have a couple questions from there, but let's start with your journey.
Okay. I'm not really sure how I got here, honestly. I went to college with no plan. I graduated with no plan. I majored in history because it was the subject I had the most fun with. I didn't have business role models in either side of my family. My dad's a minister. My mom's a social worker, helping build daycare centers around the country and helping communities think about daycare more strategically. So I didn't really know what I was going to do. And all the men in my family were ordained Episcopal ministers. And I said, I landed with a degree in my hand, knowing more what I didn't want to do than what I did want to do. And the first choice I made was one to follow love. And I was dating a woman from California, and I graduated college in Connecticut. And so, like a lot of smart business people, I followed love. And I landed in California in the late 80s. I had interviewed on campus with a company from San Francisco called Esprit. It was a fashion company doing pretty well at the time. And they said, hey, if
I
you're ever
remember
out
them.
here, yeah, if you're ever out here, stop by. We'd love to talk to you more. They were a company a little bit ahead of their time in terms of how they thought about talent. And they're like, you're going to rotate around, try different things, production, design, manufacturing, human resources, accounting, credit, and so forth. And in my second rotation, I landed in recruiting, and I'm like, wait, you get paid to do this stuff? You can actually hang out with people and build teams. And I discovered something dramatic, and it was a life-changing moment for me. I mean, I feel really like at 22, 23, I just stumbled onto this. I didn't do a single internship in college at all, but I played a lot of sports, and I love sports. And I went to a small Division III school. I played two sports, freshman year, baseball, basketball, and then sophomore through senior, I switched to tennis, and finished out my career playing tennis. And I still play, but I loved everything about sports. I love watching how people handle different situations and what kind of combinations of people produce different outcomes, how people handle pressure, how people, love, the intensity, is how people don't like intensity. And And so I found myself in a place where like, hey, I can use everything I loved about sports and apply that in a way that I can relate to. And so I fell in love. And after a couple of years of doing that in a very small team of like 9 people, I said, you know what, I think I want to double down on this. And I want to go to a big company where they know what they're doing. So I went from this 3,000 person company to like a 15,000 person insurance company just north of San Francisco in beautiful Marin County called Fireman's Fund. And I became an HR manager. Did that for 3-4 years and then was recruited into the high tech world. Had my first headhunter call. I can still remember his name was Tom Gilbert. I was like, whoa, headhunter's calling me. This is legit, man. I'm somebody. So headhunter calls me. I take the call. I come down to Silicon Valley. This is the boom days, like mid 90s. I mean, everyone's going to be a millionaire tomorrow kind of thing. Whoa. And I was seduced by coming from insurance, where we would have a meeting to decide who's going to come to the meeting, and moving to high tech, where you bump into someone in the hallway, you have a meeting, you make a decision, then you go back to your cube and you implement it. I was like, this is great. This is real time, excitement, and the dynamism just really pulled me in. And a few years later, while I was there, it was the AMD where I settled. I decided to get a master's degree. And I said, I want to do this for the rest of my life. So I'm probably mid 30s now. And I finally said, I'm going to double down. I'm going to be the best that I can be. And I finally, for the first time in my life, went to school with a purpose. Like I know what I want. I want to learn about everything: organization design, development, training, HR strategy, all that stuff. And I still, to this day, I collaborate with some classmates. There's only 9 of us, and some of the professors. I do work with some professors that were in the program. So it was great, big confidence builder. From there, I moved to Cisco, where I did a lot of M&A, merger and integration work for 6 years. When the dot-com bubble burst, they shipped me over to Asia and said, hey, would you like to have an international assignment? I said, Europe sounds great. Amsterdam, Paris, Rome. They're like, how about Singapore? I said, I can do UK, Greece. They're like, how about Singapore? Okay, got it. So I went to Asia for a couple of years. And that was my first son was born there, and made in America, but born in Singapore. And then after about 2 years, the company's like, hey, you need to come back. And I said, I'm not coming back. I don't want to go back. And they're like, I said, you just invested in me. Like, and the irony of that whole situation was really funny in retrospect. The big business problem I was trying to solve was when you send talent on assignment from the US to Asia, it's usually because they're top talent. And we were losing people when they would come back to the US. So I said, can you solve that problem? And so I started to say, yeah, we're not thoughtful about how we handle people post-assignment. And then my own organization just rips the carpet right out from under the very thing I'm trying to solve for by doing it to me. So I took a job in Canada, my first head of HR job. Now, PMC Sierra, a company you've never heard of before, probably the most career satisfying part of my life, including the years with LinkedIn later.
I actually owned a few shares of PMC Sierra back in the day. I think I could only afford like 5 shares when it was booming.
Okay.
And so
Awesome.
I'm familiar.
You are on the short list of people that actually know what that
I have
what
no
that company
idea
is
what
all
that
about.
is.
So yeah, I joined them. So you'll appreciate this, Stephen. I joined them when they were suffering from a stock option hangover. They had been trading at 280 something, thanks to your investment. And when I joined, they were $9. And one of the problems I had to solve there was something called AMT, which is the way the Canadian tax law worked, which wasn't very savvy on stock options as a compensation tool, was when you purchased the shares, you had to pay the tax. And so people, when the stock dropped, they owed a tax bill of a share that was worth $289 and it was only worth $9. So they had to declare bankruptcy. And we tried to negotiate with the government and they're like, no, you guys are trying to pull the wool over us. I'm like, no, this is legit. So that was really hard. That was a hard time, but it was really fun. I loved it. Loved Canada. I had a set of twins born there. And you can tell they're from Canada. They're a little cold to the touch when you hold them. But that was, I loved the Vancouver, British Columbia lifestyle. But my boss retired after about 4 years and he was the lifeblood of my true engagement in that opportunity. And so I'm like, I woke up one day, and I don't know if anyone who works in a lifestyle town versus a career town has ever felt this, but I woke up in the best years of my career, so mid 40s, and my boss is leaving, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm in a city. There's like 2 other jobs for me in this whole city. There was Lululemon and some telecom company that's no one's ever heard of, TELUS. And I'm like, I don't know that I want to do those. And I don't even know if they have an opening for me, if it would. So I got wooed at the time by Electronic Arts back to Expensive Land, California. And they relocated me back. That's when another shockwave hit my life. The 2008 financial crisis hit, and the job I was hired to do shriveled it in half. And anyone who's read my book knows that's the beginning of my book, which is I was only there for a little over a year, and I found a much better job. LinkedIn offered me an opportunity to be their first chief people officer, and I resigned, and I was made to feel bad, and my boss was made to feel bad that I was leaving early. And I'm like, this is just wrong. Like, this is a great opportunity. They should be celebrating this. I should be celebrating it. And it just, something seemed out of sync. And that was the beginning of me starting the book journey, which hopefully we'll get into a little bit today. But so I was at LinkedIn, employee number, I don't know, like 400, 6-year-old company. And in the next 4 years, so 3.5, 4 years, we grew to 4,000. We went through an IPO. We went from 2 offices to 17, from employees we went from two countries to 17, and 2 offices to 26 offices. And it was just the most crazy, stressful, amazing, beautiful, insane 4 years that felt like 20 of my life. I decided one day, and it just like, those people who can see this can see all the gray hair I have, which I didn't have going into that job. But I, after incredible run there, we're very, very proud of the work that I did, and a culture that I still feel proud of to this day. I think it's one of the best cultures in business, and having a hand in helping architect that. I was fried, absolutely fried. And I was the only executive with 3 young kids. Well, let me rephrase that. I was the only executive with 3 young kids that didn't have an army of 6 nannies like the CEO did, helping him raise his 2 small kids. And that took a toll on me. And what broke the straw on the camel's back for me was on a Friday morning, one day, I was leaving for work, and my son says, "Dad, are you gonna be home early tonight?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm definitely be home early." And he says, like 8:30, 9. And I just went, "Oh, is that what he thinks being home early is on a Friday?" Like, I've lost it. And
something's wrong here.
And LinkedIn had done so well, you guys, that I was like, I really didn't have to work for a while if I didn't want to. So I just jumped off. In the last 10 years, I've been helping companies and leaders think about talent differently. And that sort of was part of the reason why I wrote my books, sort of helping organizations rethink the new world of talent. But there you go.
Awesome. I love your story. And Daniel, you're going to have to rein us in on this episode, because there's so many, so many things that I relate to Steve and your story. The 2 things in particular that jumped out, I started my HR career in global mobility, which not a lot of people start their careers in global mobility, and then, jump from consulting to the corporate side and got into HR, mergers and acquisitions. And your story is kind of the opposite way around. You started in M&A, then actually took an assignment, which I never had the opportunity to do. But so many things that I relate to. But you just released a book. Tell us a little bit about that. What led to you deciding to write a book?
Well, probably a few things. Among the things that I've done the last 8 to 10 years is taught and spoken at a lot of conferences around the world. And inevitably someone will come up and say, "Hey, where's your book?" And I point to my brain and go, it's here. But I'm the master procrastinator. I don't think it's going to happen. And after a few failed attempts at trying to get going on this, I finally wooed a friend of mine who was going through transition at the San Francisco Chronicle business section. I was like, "Dude, you got to help me, like, pull this out of my head, please." A guy named Thomas Lee, who's a good friend. And Thomas said, "Okay, let's go." So I started outlining. He would start drafting. I would start second drafting, and then just picked up steam. And the reason I started to do that was because I was just seeing too many people frustrated, companies frustrated, professionals frustrated. And part of my last, transition point between jobs from Electronic Arts to LinkedIn, I sort of tasted like, I didn't feel good, like something's not right with how this goes. And the world is different now. And so I feel like I started to develop a thesis around the psychology of the workforce is fundamentally shifting. and no one's talking about it. And I don't think anything in my book is like, whoa, I never thought of that. I feel like what I've done is connected dots in a way to explain why the wrong conversation is robots, AI, and technology is the future, and why the right conversation is, do you know what? In a complex world, the most valuable skill you can build is the skill of learning new things, because we know your job's going to change. We know our business is going to change. And the more you can change, the more valuable you are to us. So one of the points I like to make in the book is, I believe in the future, we're going to hire people more on what they can learn than what they know, because we know our business is going to change and so forth. So those are the kinds of, it was a bunch of things that were irritating me. I was so sick of seeing every conference on the future works about robots and AI. And none of them were around, hey, if we told you that we could make your job more impactful, we could give you more job satisfaction, you could take all that crap off your table and you won't have to do it again, would you be excited? And someone go, yeah, okay, well, that's the future work. But that's not what we do. We say, oh, we're going to have a digital transformation and you're probably going to need to upskill. You probably won't want to do that. So we're going to probably need to replace you with someone else. And, we hire all these consultants to tell us that we have to do things because we don't have the courage to face it ourselves. And so I just trying to change the narrative here, and let's have a more, like I said, more honest conversation. Right.
And I love that. I feel like, we've talked on the Modern People Leader a lot about, buzzwords and AI and, whatever the new HR buzzword is at the moment. And, I agree. I think that we get lost in the conversation. And so one interesting thing to me was, because I have read your book, and it must have been really interesting for you. You clearly laid out a lot of things that have been happening, some trends that have been happening for, over, some of which over a decade. And then COVID happens. And one of the things that I love about your book is you mention COVID and you reference it, but you also build a case for, or at least my interpretation is that from your perspective, these things were already happening. And then we have this situation, COVID-19, global pandemic, and it just kind of exacerbated or accelerated some of the things, or I guess cast a spotlight on these things that were already in motion. Is that interpretation right? Is that how you look at this?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I woke up when the pandemic, became clear this is real and it's really going to change our world, and had a mini sort of panic attack. I'm like, oh my God, what if the last 2 years writing this book is going to be worth nothing, because the way the pandemic is going to shape the future of work is going to be completely, sideways to what I was thinking. And after a few nights, I woke up one morning and told my wife, like, hey, guess what? I think my book stands up even more. And so I'm not excited about the pandemic being here, but it has provided a moment in time, the best moment of our lifetimes, in fact, for us to rebuild a better future work. So it couldn't have asked for a better assist from this pandemic in terms of forcing everyone. I mean, think about this. Is there any company culture that hasn't been significantly altered by the pandemic?
No.
Is there anyone's
Absolutely.
life? Even frontline workers, oh, I'm still going to work at the front line. Yeah, but you got a lot more fear. People are looking at you funny. You got to handle your job differently. I mean, everyone's world went weird. And one of the things that I said was causing this shift in the new psychology of the workforce is that workers and companies can see less the future than ever before. Like we have less certainty, and that's anxiety producing for both parties. And it's really anxiety. As someone who's a lifelong recruiter here, I know less about the skills I should be recruiting for now than ever. And, I could have easily bashed, and I see a lot of people bashing traditional education and student loan debt and all this. And, I saw one article recently, like, oh, schools are not preparing people for the workforce. And I'm going, well, where are the schools getting their data on how to prepare people from you, business? What are you telling them? Crickets. And so I'm not pointing a finger out, but I'm just trying to help people understand, why are you anxious? Why are cases of anxiety, depression increasing? Because we have less certainty, and we're human, and we don't like that. We want to know things are predictable. I was teaching a class today, and it was a sort of a fun moment for me to do this. I said, we're experiencing right now, and we've been experiencing before the pandemic, something called cognitive dissonance. And by that, in the leadership world, and that we need to sort of reboot and redefine what leadership is. But we used to build, as organizations, for predictable, reliable, consistent results, right? That's what you're trained to, like, that's what a board wants. We want to know you're going to deliver. It's got to be consistent and reliable. And that's why we forecast and plan and we scenario plan. Well, now I believe the muscle and the competitive advantage of a company is how well you deal with instability, how well you can respond and react and anticipate inconsistency. And so we've built for consistency. So what have we done to build for consistency? The longer you stay, the more valuable you are. We want you in your job a long time. We want to know that it's not going to be messed up. And then we look at Tesla, which is absolutely crushing the automobile industry. And they've got a median tenure of 2 years, and they're more valuable than Honda, Toyota, and Ford combined, and then some. So, and they didn't hire people from the auto industry. They're solving it differently in a different way. And so that's sort of, the pandemic just was really, I couldn't have asked for a better assist, as I said.
Yeah. I think it was an alley-oop, and I think just to add to that, the whole conversation right now around do we embrace a digital first or hybrid approach, or do we go back into the office? And I feel like that a lot of that is rooted in this old way of thinking, in terms of like feeling like we need to go back into the office because it's what is known, it's what we always have done, and it's predictable. I can see butts and seats, and so I know people are getting work done. However, all the data that we've collected over the last 18 months says, like, puts that to question, like, is that really the best approach? And we don't need to launch into that, but as I heard you walking through cognitive dissonance, it just, like, that's just another example of wanting to approach things a traditional way that we've known in the past to work.
Completely agree. And just to put an underline for what you're saying, I think we all have to give each other grace in this moment of craziness right now. I don't blame companies for saying we got to get back, because it's how they know. And there's a lot of money on the line, and their jobs on the line, and their investors on the line. I know I can deliver when we're doing it that way. And, if you're in the financial services, someone on a podcast recently tried to bait me by showing a video of Jamie Dimon going, if you're not in the office, you're not hustling, get back here. And they're like, what do you think of that? And I go, that's someone who is very certain he knows how to deliver value that way. And he's managing billions of dollars. And he's also worried that network security is not going to, convince him that everyone dialing in from their home is going to protect their data from the Russians and the Chinese hackers. Like, hey, so I get it. But shame on us if we don't take advantage of this moment in time to try some new stuff. And I did a little bit of a provocative post a couple of days ago. I said, everyone to me complains right now, can't recruit, just can't recruit, can't find people. Everyone's got a new psychology work. And I'm trying to say, people, it's not that you can't recruit. It's that you're stuck believing that you need an employee in the old world model to get something done. Maybe you can do it with some people from Upwork, or a contract, with a bunch of gig workers. Like, how, if that's your model, yeah, you're going to have trouble, because everyone's in this moment of recalibration right now. We got people going to Costa Rica, dialing in with their fatigues on, and, it's like a different world. So, let's embrace. And who says we can't build something better this way? We don't know, but because we're human, we revert in crisis to what we know. And that, I get it, but we should at least experiment, right? Like, let's try some things and see how it goes. And that's what I try to do in my book, is show examples of, like, college basketball, right? Thank you for saying alley-oop. Like, I lived the first 10 years of my career saying, don't let people know that you're into sports because it's really male dominant kind of stuff. Like, hey, no, I'm talking about sports now. And college basketball, look what they've gone through. 4 years of having an athlete. Now it's just 6 months to your best athlete, and they have to reinvent themselves as a new team every year. And they're doing it. It's not what they want, probably, and it's compared to the way it was, but it's the way it is, right?
Yeah, and I feel like this all goes back to loyalty versus employability. And I just love the Duke Coach K, Zion Williamson, reference, and how, Coach K completely shifted how he was going to recruit players and how he was going to develop them. He went from saying, I'm going to recruit guys that are going to come in for 4 years. And, we're going to build like a program around these guys, and they're going to be here for the long haul, to saying, that's not going to work. If we want the best players and we want to win, we need to tell them, you're coming here for a year, and you're going to get more out of our program than you're going to get anywhere else. And we're going to set you up to go to the NBA and have a great career. And I had never really thought about, you know, the traditional job that way. But I think it could be. And I think you referenced, or you were talking about, I can't remember his name. It was a gentleman that worked at LinkedIn, I think maybe Goman, and how the first thing that he would ask new hires is, where do you
Gamson.
want to work?
Gamson. Yeah. Mike
Gamson.
Gamson.
Sorry, yeah, I completely
Yeah.
butchered the name.
That's fine.
Yeah,
he won't listen.
He would ask them, where do you want to work after LinkedIn? And I imagine people probably were caught really off guard. I would be caught off guard if somebody asked me that, but it makes total sense. If you're starting your relationship with your manager, on the basis of like honesty and trust, and you're collaborating on your career, that's only going to benefit the both of you. It's going to benefit, you and your professional development, but it's also going to benefit the company because, obviously you're going to be more engaged. You're probably going to learn more. So yeah, I just loved how you made the comparison between college basketball and the workforce today.
Yeah, and I think thank you for recognizing that. And I think what's behind that is an honest conversation that I really think is, and here's the logic trail. So when I speak to executives around the world, what's your biggest problem? Can't hire people and they're not staying. Okay, the next question is, do you think that's going to change? Do you think we're in a moment in time where in 2 or 3 years, people are going to stay longer? They say, absolutely not. I said, so you believe the trend of talent is to stay shorter. Okay, so why is every one of your benefits based on people staying a long time? Well, maybe you can repurpose that and expect people to leave and build something like college basketball has and start the conversation with, we know this isn't your destination. We're part of your journey. We want it to be the best part of your journey, and we're going to make you better. And that's why I really believe that the best thing you can do for your employees is make them more capable of doing something greater tomorrow. And isn't that better than promising job security, promising career security, right? And what Coach K does, I think, and by the way, college basketball coaches in many states in America are the highest paid state employees.
They are.
The Kentucky basketball coach, paid more than any state employee. So it's a big business. But isn't that a more meaningful thing where Coach K is saying, listen, I'm going to set you up for the next phase better than anyone else. And guess what? If it doesn't work, because the odds are against you getting a job in the NBA, I'll hook you up as an announcer, as a scout, as an assistant coach. I've got your back. I care about you, not just when you work for me. I call that the Tony Soprano School of HR. What? You quit? You're dead to me.
I'm a huge Sopranos fan, so I just love that.
When I can get my inner East Coast, Joey Buttafuoco, thing going on, it makes me excited. But I do think that that's a mind shift for all of us. And it's certainly easy for me to say that. Having been in human resource roles where I was trying to keep you as long as I could, and I didn't want to give you tuition reimbursement because I thought it was going to make you more valuable and you would leave. I get it. But we all have to acknowledge that logic train. Do you think people are going to stay longer tomorrow? No. Okay. So what are our choices? We're going to be the exception. They're going to leave everyone else faster except for us. Really? I don't think so. I think you're going to have people that are going to leave. So let's build how we create value differently. And maybe it's like how we onboard faster, or we communicate quicker, or Spotify is an example I use in the book. They force move people around at least every 2 years. So that's the ultimate high velocity world of work insurance policy. More people know how to do more jobs. Now, it doesn't work in every industry because some jobs require deep technical expertise that you just can't move people around every 2 years, but that business you can. So anyway, that's part of my goal with the book, is to try to demystify and try to show some breadcrumbs for people to build something in a way that it will work and give them confidence, right?
I agree. I think that one of the points you made is there's this obsession with retention, and you walk the reader through how turnover can actually benefit an industry and can actually benefit your company, in the form, and I think, an example of turnover, or, employees evolving and moving on. I think that's how Dina Upton at Drift put it. So when someone, evolves and they go to their next opportunity, the consulting industry like encourages that, right? because they
Mhm.
know, oh, well, we've got an ally at Fortune
That's
100,
right.
500
Yeah.
company who knows the services and the value
Yeah.
of what we do, and so that's a positive thing for our business, and I think that that's still the minority of leaders and executives that are looking at turnover as an opportunity. And I'm just
Mhm.
curious, like, what do you know, what is it that needs to fundamentally change from the leadership mindset? Or, is it situational, from a business to business perspective, in terms of like getting comfortable with that, the notion that like people are going to leave. I'm better off trying to find, the opportunity in this. I'm just curious, like, what are your thoughts there?
Well, I'm definitely of the belief that of course you want to keep your best people. And I'm not here to tell you I'm excited that the world is more fluid. I'm sort of at the tip of the spear saying I think we have to accept it's inevitable and inevitability. It's going to happen. And not every industry is going to be immune from this. And every industry, as you say, is going to have different needs. For example, if I'm in a hospital, I'm really worried about turnover because patient care, lives are on the line. That's an issue for me, and protocol and practice is really, really important. So, but what I like about this more challenging domain we're in for recruiting talent is, well, then it's on you, hospital, to be the best freaking hospital that anyone would ever want to work for. It's not about paying people more money. It's about the quality of the experience, the community that they feel a part of, and do they feel like they make a difference? And that's drawing a little bit from my lesson on when I was growing LinkedIn. We were in the shadows of Google, Apple, Facebook, Twitter. They could pay more. They were sexier. They had more benefits. Sushi chefs, on-site childcare. They made more money in a day than we made in a year in some cases. So what could I do? I could make the experience of working with me way better than anywhere else. And I doubled down on our mission, which is help people find their dream jobs. And that's what I'm trying to tell people is like, listen, you don't know that you can't build a better model with this more fluid. You just don't know. You don't like it. And you think Coach K liked it? No, he was the last head coach of a major program because he was getting killed by like the Butlers and the mid majors. He's like, this is horrible. Yeah. And his coach, his assistant coach is, yeah, because they're getting all the good players and you're only hiring the ones that are going to commit for 4 years and they're not the good players. So what do you want? You want to be mediocre or do you want to play ball in the big leagues? And so he's like, okay, I'm going to have to figure this out. And that means more active recruiting. That means more active nurturing and making and having a bigger conversation and playing the long game. But it is going to be hard for people to make that shift. And I think where I'm trying to start at this part of the conversation, Stephen, is do you agree philosophically that this is directionally the way talent's going to play? They're going to leave more. Yes, you do. Okay. Well, then you need to figure out what that means for your business. I can't tell you. But doing the same thing and playing long-term retention is probably not going to, net the best results for you,
Yep,
Yeah.
Sorry,
totally
that's
agree.
our internal security force here.
So I feel like a lot of this conversation just keeps going back to all of the uncertainty that there is right now and how people are relying on doing the same things that they've always done, whether it's in marketing or it's in recruiting or it's in sales or whatever. And because things are changing so much and so rapidly with COVID, there's this new skill that is going to be highly sought after, which you call, well, really it's just a tolerance for ambiguity. And I don't know, I just feel like everything you're saying is interconnected. You talk about high tolerance of ambiguity. You also talk about how every employee has the ability to be an entrepreneur and everybody can experiment. And this really resonated with me because, I started this podcast with Steven and this was just an idea, something we wanted to do as a side project. It's neither of our day jobs. And I've learned so much from this podcast, whether it's, marketing the podcast on LinkedIn, or creating video clips or, how to edit a podcast. And yeah, I mean, I just feel like there's so many opportunities for people within their companies. It doesn't have to be a side project for them to have these same opportunities to learn. And I thought it was interesting, how there was one example that you gave in particular. It was a family, and I think they had a kid with a disability. I'll let you share that story, but Yeah. How about you share that story? Because I thought that one was really interesting.
Yeah, and I think what I was trying to do with this part of the book is apply just a human perspective that sometimes life deals us a hand that may feel is less than we deserve. And part of this chapter is this woman named Eva Labea Rodriguez, and Eva have found out with her husband at the age of 4, I think their daughter was, that she just wasn't engaging, she wasn't talking, wasn't playing with other people. And after about a year of going to experts around the world, found someone that believed they knew what was going on, that she had an extra chromosome, and that the best way for her to learn was through YouTube's. And so she was an executive with a fashion company, very successful. And her husband's a fireman, so he had free time when he wasn't on duty. And he became the videographer, and she became the producer. And they started making videos to the point where a few years later, the daughter starts responding dramatically, starts speaking English and Spanish fluently from nothing to one day being fluent in 2 languages. And more amazingly, after a couple of years, they were on a flight and they landed and they found out that they'd had 1 million views of one of their YouTubes. And now she's a YouTube star. And she didn't try to be a YouTube star. She was solving a problem in her family and was told to try to tackle it a different way. And I just love that story. She's an amazing person. And I told her, like, you need to get out there and tell the world your story. Are you going to give me permission to do it? Because I'll do it. But a lot of people are going to want to know about you. And it's a great story about family. It's about hope. It's about triumph over adversity. And she's like, I'm 40. I never thought I would be a YouTube, sensation. Who does? Who wakes up for that? And I had a moment in my own life where a few years ago, I'm sitting around with my kids and we're having a quiet moment. And I look up and they're all on their iPads. I'm like, what the heck are you guys doing? And like, oh, we're watching this guy, Zach Hempel, and he's going around catching baseballs in baseball stadiums. And I started thinking about it, and we played around with it. And I tell a story in the book, but the takeaway for me was, even someone who's in high tech and, in a social media company, I was like, what is someone going to learn if they want to be a YouTuber? Because I asked my kids, like, what do you want to do? Like, we want to be a YouTuber. I was like, okay. And I thought about that, and I was like, well, what are they learning? They're learning that if I create content that's valuable, I become valuable. That's a great lesson. I was like, yeah. And so we went to, try to do what the YouTuber was doing, and we succeeded. And it was just like an incredible, like, whoa, this can work. Now, we didn't make any videos that got 1 million views, but that was an amazing, eye-opening experience for me as a father, that there's a new frontier of opportunity and value creation. And that's a beautiful part. And that's also got to be intimidating for the big companies, you guys, is that there's more ways for people to create value outside of working for a company than ever before. And we've seen that in the pandemic, more new filings for startups than in any time in history. And more people having multiple things at the same time. And so we're not sure how it's going to land, but I think, being more autonomous of your circumstances is something that everyone strives for. So I think it's generally a good thing.
So I want to talk about another concept in the book. You describe a conversations, that you had with Carol Dweck, I believe was her name, and the importance of having a growth mindset. And I'm a big believer in, the mindset that you bring, and mindset enabling capabilities and opportunities. And so tell us a little bit about the concept of learning agility and why it's so important in today's workplace and just in your individual career.
Sure. Well, part of why I want to talk about this in my book was because I'm so tired of people saying, you just need to be a lifelong learner. I'm like, well, what the heck is that? I've been told that forever. Like, let me try to put a face to it. Let me try to visualize it for people, because we all hear that, oh, you need to be a lifelong learner. Of course we do. We all are, whether we realize it or not. And so Carol Dweck is an incredible woman. I didn't meet her, but I read a lot about her stuff and included her in the book because she's the woman who created this notion of the growth mindset, which is really found on being intellectually curious. And I really do believe in this world where we need to continue to hire people that can learn fast. That's the starting point. Are you just intellectually curious? And I think more and more organizations are starting to and will begin to really assess your curiosity. Now, I'm really curious how you're going to assess curiosity, but that's just interesting for me. And I look at my own life, and I'm not, I don't know how some things developed the way they did, but I was always like, why does that work the way it does? I'm just always like, huh? I don't know, whether I'm going to a farm, like how do you have all these, like, how do you do that? How does it work? And I'm always just wanting to know, like, how does the pitcher throw that pitch like that? Like, what are they doing? Why is the release point? There's a guy for the Giants right now named Rogers. He throws the ball like underhand, like he's like, what, how is that happening? And what are the physics of it?
Yeah.
And so, and I think, I'm cursed, like you guys are cursed as human resource people. Like we have a high empathy, like see the world from other perspectives. And I think, this notion of we all don't know what skills we need for tomorrow. So what skill do you need? You need the skill of learning new skills. That's what you need. And that's why I'm trying to say, don't stress out about picking the right skill. And I had this great debate a few weeks ago with a gentleman who says, listen, Steve, I live in India, and here it's all about STEM. Okay. So don't talk to me about human skills, soft skills. It's all about STEM. And I said, well, let me tell you, as someone who's recruited tons of STEM majors, I've hired my fair share of STEM mercenaries. They're really good, but no one likes working with them. So it's got to be a combination. Clearly, technical proficiency is highly valued right now. But what's even more valued is your ability to apply that, bring people in, educate them, and influence them. That's going to be a beautiful thing. And so, it's not there's no simple answer here, right? I was on the phone with a very large multinational a few weeks ago, and they're like, tell us, what is the answer, Steve? Work from home, hybrid, back to the office. And I said, my answer is going to be highly unsatisfying. It's all the above. You got to experiment. And you're not in an industry like tech that is always experimenting with their products. So the ease of transition into your culture is not as challenging as a company that's command and control, and we're very methodical. And so those organizations are struggling. They're not used to the experimentation. So we walked through and I said, look, you guys are building new plant-based foods, meats out of plants. I said, what do you think your scientists do? They experiment. I don't know. You have to use that kind of thinking relative to your teams. How do they work? Today, I don't know if you guys saw this on your HR newsfeed like I did, just jumped off the page and I threw it out on my LinkedIn post. Canva announces they're letting their teams decide how they want to work. Not divisions, not organizations, not the company saying do this. And that's like checkmate for a lot of these companies. Like, what? What? And Steve Jobs used to say, like, we don't hire smart people to tell them what to do. We hire smart people to tell us what to do. And but that's a software company. So that, their power is their people. And so they have a strong desire to want the best people, provide circumstances for the people. Right. So, but it's super interesting.
Well, I think if you have people with a growth mindset, or learning agility, they're going to thrive in they're going to thrive in any environment, so long as you're providing the opportunity for them to learn, to grow, to try things, to experiment. One of the things that really stuck out to me was, the quote, "It's not easy or fun, but it's required today." So in my experience, learning has not always been easy or fun. In fact, in the entrepreneurial path or segment of my career, the learning has been very painful, actually. But in those moments, of where I had the most adversity or it was the most painful, is where I grew the most and I learned the most. And I think that, in this uncertain times that we're living in, I think that the companies that are able to create that, they're going to see positive outcomes.
I totally agree. And it hurts, right? Carol Dweck said that if your brain's hurting, you're probably growing, or one of my friends in sports, we were playing tennis the other day and he's like, my hip hurts, my knee hurts. And I said, if you're over 50 and something's not sore, you're probably dead. But that's part of the rub here. That's why we're facing some resistance to this new future of work. That is hard, right? And it's not what the promise that we were told. And the other thing that I mentioned in the book, which is another disheartening reality, is that the lifespan of a value of you using a skill is shorter than it's ever been. You're going to learn something. It's going to be good for you and for a shorter time frame than ever. And that we just know is true. And those are mainly hard skills. That's why I believe doubling down on your soft skills is going to differentiate you than all this technology and AI and automation can do. Like, you're compassionate and empathetic, and you're a leader, and you can communicate well, and you can build trust and deliver psychological safety. Those are going to serve you really well. But somehow we are sort of drawn to the starry, like moths to the starry light of STEM majors, which is important. But you really want to thrive in the future. It's that notion of learning agility and starting out with a growth mindset. Like, and one of the, great stories that Carol Dweck gives, and I would highly recommend, if any of this stuff sounds interesting to you, just read or watch Carol Dweck deliver a presentation on this. Super interesting. And it's hard to get your head around. Like, I had to reread her stuff like 4 or 5 times before, like, okay, I think I can explain this now. This is hard. But a fixed mindset is basically your voice saying, I can't learn that. I know I'm not cut out for that, right? Like, how many of us have had parents like, no, you're not really, that's not the way you're built. Why are you doing that? Why are you shutting that door? And at different points, like, my eldest son right now is applying to college, and it couldn't be less interesting to him right now than playing a video game. Like, I'm like, hey, so what schools are on your list? Like, you're not even going to give me one? Like, you're going to need to submit an application in 2 months. This is the biggest decision of your life to date. He's like, yeah. And so I look at that and I'm like, I've hired people from schools who didn't even go to college, or people went to schools I never even heard of. So I'm not stressed about it in the least. But I do find it interesting that he's not there yet. He is just not there on his curve. So I'm not going to say, well, he's irresponsible, or he doesn't have a clue, or he's not motivated. He's just on his developmental curve. It's just not there. So then I'm like, parental guilt kicks in. Am I making his life too easy? Should I make this harder for him? Like, should I force him, like, no car, no video games until I see 3, essays done? I'm like, no, I just need to remind him that this is and I, sort of pulled him by his hair to go see 5 or 6 schools in the East Coast a few weeks ago, and just had a blast. And I know you guys are earlier on your trail of doing that, but some of the most fun I've had in the last 5 years was going on those campus tours a few weeks ago with my son, and just revisiting that whole, like, whoa. And I'm very lucky I had a grandparent who could pay for my college tuition. And I still had about $30,000 of student debt when I left, but that's a great privilege, and it's a great time. Even though I do believe it's less necessary today to have a college degree, I think that's an incredible learning time for you to just experience new things, not just academic, right? So it was really, really fun.
That's the debate that I always have with my parents. I tell them, like, I don't think you necessarily need to go to college to have a great career. I know plenty of smart people that didn't go to college, and I know plenty of smart people that went to colleges that aren't respected. But it's a great experience. Some of the best times of my life were in college.
Yeah, me too.
And you just never forget those experiences that you had with the group of people that you meet in those really formative years. So completely.
And you get to experiment, right?
Yeah,
Daniel, you get to try new stuff. Like, maybe I'm going to try this African dance. Like, I took a singing class at my university, and I was like, oh, wait, you're going to grade me on singing? I was just going to study singing, like, not sing. Like, oh yeah. And I sang, and a couple of my friends like, dude, you can actually carry a note. I'm like, no, I can't. Like, you just mess with me. Right? But I learned something about myself. Right.
Yeah.
So, and it's worthwhile. And this takes me to sort of where I see organizations define learning. I'm curious what you guys think about this. Like, the biggest, I think, barrier that I'd like to break down for people is I tell them, you need a learning organization. You need to build learning into the work experience. I'm not telling you to bring professors in from the best schools of the world and grow your talent. That's not what I'm doing. I'm saying you got to deliver learning through the application of work somehow, right? And that's when the leaders go, huh? Like, you mean, but they have to deliver value. How are they going to learn and deliver value? Like, I'm getting paid for my team to deliver results. If they're learning while they're doing, how's that work? And that's hard. And that's a new dance. But I don't know, what are you guys seeing in that realm?
No, I couldn't agree with you more. I think for me, being the CEO of a startup, it I don't have all the resources that big companies have to create learning opportunities. So for me, the biggest opportunity is, creating that through the work experience itself and offering an environment that, encourages the experimentation that you've talked about, that won't penalize you, or, an environment where there's not a fear that if I get it wrong, if I actually don't deliver on what on this experiment, that it's not going to set you back, or you're not going to be limited for a promotion opportunity, or whatever you want to accomplish in your career. And I think that that we've been successful in doing that. And
Mm.
in fact, we've had employees that have said, like, wow, I get it now. Like, I didn't totally get it, and you were giving me these opportunities, and it felt maybe like it was opportunistic for you, which, being fair, it was opportunistic. But after the fact, I've had conversations where it was like, wow, like I don't quite get that anymore in my job, and I want that. And I think it's such an easy thing for companies to provide and to offer, but yet, we still operate in these, pre-World War II constructs of, formal learning and development, and, the competencies, and, these really structured ways of doing it, that I think, there's an institution of, an old way of providing learning opportunities. And I think that that we're going to quickly see that's another area that has to change. I think, online learning can provide you with a catalog of different, topics or interest areas for you to learn, but
Mhm.
it's still, in my mind, it still doesn't, capture like a rich learning experience for an employee. I don't know, Daniel, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I guess if I just go back to when I was working with you at Workify, and you came to me and you said, "Hey, someone on our board thinks that we should invest in paid search. I know this is something that you've never done before, but do you want to figure it out?" And I think that was the first step, just giving me the opportunity to do something that I've never done before, but that that I had interest in. And yeah, I mean, I learned a ton. Like, yes, I was able to find online courses where I could learn all of the technical side of it, but the actual doing of it and building out the campaigns in Google, setting up the ad groups, doing the keyword research, writing the ad copy, I learned so much in those 5 years that I worked at Workify, because not only did I do that with paid search, but you said the same thing for marketing automation. Go figure out Marketo. You said the same thing for our content management system, the same thing for content. And, at the end of those 5 years, I was, I had way more, I guess, uh, the skills that I had were way more broad when it came to marketing than I think most people have. I think most people will learn one skill, and then that's what they'll, I guess, double down on. And that's what they're going to do for the next 10 years. But because I had all of those skills, it gave me so many more opportunities. And yeah, I mean, when I went to go work at Udacity, I, I felt like you were legitimately happy for me. And I think that I was able to, get progress in my career because of these opportunities that you gave me to fail. Like, we made so many mistakes, but because we made those mistakes and we experimented over and over again, and there was some structure around the experiments, I learned so much.
Let me add to what I think is behind what you're just saying. And you became pretty animated when you're explaining that. And when I was building LinkedIn, a big company guy coming to a pre-IPO startup. I mean, it's 400 people, so it's pretty far advanced. But I didn't know what a formula for success looked like. For the 4 years I was there, the median tenure of that company for the whole time was 9 months. $26.5 billion sale price to Microsoft before the 20th birthday of that company. How the heck did that happen? And I said, it's taken me years to sort of go, what was going, like, it was the more complex social network business model, way more complicated than Google's or Facebook's, because we had different multiple lines of business. There's a, a sales navigator. There's a free, network business. There's a advertising and recruiting. It was just different, right? So how do we do that? In retrospect, what I think happened was we doubled the size I was there every year, 400,000, 1,002, 2 to 4. So what happens in that environment of hypergrowth is that every senior leader is closing candidates, and every one of their lieutenants is stepping into their job, doing something on paper they're not qualified to do. Ad search, whatever you are, like on paper said, you're not qualified to do that. Our whole leadership team at LinkedIn, any investor prior to the IPO filing looked at us like, okay, first time CEO, okay, CFO never taken a company public, okay, every leader managing more people and more functions than they've ever managed in their life. Yeah, this is going to crash and burn. I think we'll take the next investment. And we destroyed it. And part of my thesis, and this is probably the next book that I'm going to write, is we underestimate the energy tackling something new unlocks for people. And when you do that at scale, imagine how you were feeling, Daniel, when you were doing like, whoa, and like, I can do this and I can learn more. And the next thing that comes in, like, bring it on. And that's infectious, and people just smell that on you. And at scale, that's a really powerful thing. And I've seen too many stories where people are doing stuff they've never done before, and they far exceed. I've worked with high schoolers or elementary school kids that have business ideas. I'm like, what? You're not supposed to do that. And they're just like, because they're not bound by that kind of thinking. And so, it goes against the command and control, and you need to have the experience. If we give you this job, I mean, this could not work out. And then that's irresponsible of me as a board of directors. So I don't think we're going to do it. We're going to have to take more risk, I think, to unlock some of that. And so that's part of, you guys are sort of Workquake 2.0 telling that story there, but that really is where we're at right now. And if you fail to see that, you're really missing an opportunity. I was on a call today with a client, and they're like, oh yeah, this is all high tech. We're not high tech, Steve. And I said, well, let me ask you a question. When have you had the most energy in your career? Doing the same thing 3 to 5 years, or doing something new? Everyone's like, doing something new. Okay, so why are you designing your job structure so people stay 2 or 3 years before they move? Like, why? And they're like, oh yeah, that was kind of dumb. I'm like, I'm just telling you, the truth. Like, you just told me you get more energy moving. You also told me the architecture of your company forbids that from happening. Why are you doing that? And I could go on and on, but that's part of where I am in my career right now. Is the LinkedIn experience gave me license to punch hard at dysfunction. And I'm growing into feeling comfortable doing that. And just started a TikTok channel last year. We've got like 125,000 followers now, which is kind of fun. And a lot of engagement with people, on thoughtful engagement around HR issues.
On TikTok.
So on TikTok. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I need to get on TikTok.
Yeah.
Same.
Well, that's what I said.
I haven't ventured in that yet, but I'm going to have to download it now.
It's, you have to kind of park the breaking all kind of security protocols, and maybe they're going to be shut down by the US government. Who knows? If you get past that, that is a treasure trove of, I was conned into this by some college students. Like, hey, Steve, you should go put your content out there, because we've seen some of your videos. I'm like, really? Like, I can't deliver that in a lip sync with a small dance. Like, I don't do that. And so we tried it. And then all of a sudden I had a few pop million views. I'm like, what? And the first one that for me that popped a million views, I'm wearing a huge dollar gold chain. Okay. Like Snoop Dogg or whatever. And I'm sitting on a chair and I'm saying, the best advice I have for you about salary is silence. I said, I got this advice from my dad. If anyone ever offers you money or a salary increase or a job offer, just be silent for 10 seconds. Don't say anything. And I promise you 80, 90% of the time, you will get a higher offer, because they're going to think they can't handle the silence. They're going to think you don't like it. And it just blew up. Now, a lot of the comments were not constructive. Some people were saying like, hey, it's 7 days since I saw that, and I'm still in a staring contest with my boss. Like, how do I end this thing? It was just hysterical. But that sort of made me go, whoa, like, what's going on here? Like, this is interesting. I'm going to play around with this. And so now what happens, I see something in the news, I just flip the camera up, post it, and away we go. And it's been pretty interesting. And I've got so many people, probably, I would say 5 to 10 a week on LinkedIn going, hey, I saw your TikTok stuff. Love it. Thank you for doing that. I just want to connect with you here. So the crossover is there. Are you pulling it up right now, Stephen? Can you see?
Yeah, I'm already planning how we need to take the modern
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go
to TikTok.
I'm gonna have to go check out your TikTok. So
well, let me
I know,
tell you something. When you have teenagers and you
yeah.
have videos on there of 1 million views, you're puffing your chest around the house a little bit more. That's right. Daddy's a TikToker.
So I know we're running over
Love
on
it.
time, but before you leave, just tell everybody what the name of your book is and where they can find it.
Okay, thank you. And thank you again for having me here. The name of the book is called Workquake, Embracing the Aftershocks of COVID-19 to Build a Better Model of Working. If any of the stuff we're talking about is interesting to you, that book is going to be even more interesting to you. You can find it on anywhere books are sold. We've got an Audible version. We have a Kindle version. And stevecadigan.com is a place where you can find out more about me. Connect with me on LinkedIn. If you have questions, I'm pretty active answering questions where I can. Definitely check out my TikTok. It's Steve Cadigan. My marketing team's not very great around giving me a cool handle, so it's just my name. But yeah, that's how you can find me.
Awesome. Well, we like to close the conversation with a one word or one phrase close. We're all going to jump in, but Steve, if you can wrap this up with one word or one phrase, what would it be?
Phantasmagorical.
Phantasmagorical.
I'll let
Love
you
it.
follow
Love
that,
it.
Stephen.
Yeah,
That's my Scrabble victory word right there.
I'm going with a phrase, and mine's going to be hashtag keep punching. Keep punching, Steve.
Like it.
Okay, mine was serious. I was gonna say hashtag ambiguity or something like that, but I like y'all's a lot better.
Ambiguity's good. Ambiguity's good. Well, Steve, thanks so much for joining us today. This has been an awesome conversation. We love to have guests come back on the show and riff with us. So hopefully you'll be interested in doing that with us. But we can't thank you enough for the great conversation.
Thanks for having me. I'm definitely coming back.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks. Bye.
Mm-hmm.